just because it's cheap doesn't mean you should be buying it. It's very tempting to buy things that are super cheap, I know, because if you can get a house cheaper than £40,000, let me know. But there is probably a very good reason for it. We've all heard the saying, if it sounds too good to be true, it normally is. And in property, that is probably the case 9 times out of 10. And let me explain why that is the case. So a lot of people will say, oh, I managed to buy a property for £35,000, £40,000 up in the northeast or somewhere like that. You've heard it. We've all heard it. You should be piling in doing it. Now, let me tell you, I bought, or had the opportunity to buy, I should say, 5 houses in the northeast last year for £40,000 each. And I thought, my goodness, £40,000 each for 5 terrace houses. I'm going to get stuck into that. But of course, I did my research, and the research was this. First question was, what is the rent? The rent was £350 per month per house. And I said to the agent, wow, presumably the rent should be £650, £700 a month each. He went, no, you might get £50 more. That is it. So that's the first thing. So that's a cross, isn't it? The second thing I said, well, I like breaking up property. So I like buying a portfolio and breaking it up individually and selling them off individually. So I said, well, what are these worth individually? If I'm paying £40,000 each for them, can I sell them for £60,000, £70,000, straight away? Or can I sell them when they're vacant for that sort of money? He went, no. They're worth about £50,000 each. I went, oh, okay, well, that's not so good. I said, do they need refurbishing? He went, yes, they do need refurbishing. And I said, okay, well, what do I need to spend on them? Well, probably £20,000 each. Okay, and what are they worth when I've spent that money? And he said £55,000 each. So there's a great example of, you can see where just because something sounds cheap, because if you can get a house cheaper than £40,000, let me know. But there is probably a very good reason for it. Okay, so just because it's cheap doesn't mean you should be buying it. It's very tempting to buy things that are super cheap, I know, because that's the market we're in, and we want things for nothing if we can get them for nothing. But it is pretty obvious, especially these days when so many people are chasing these smaller, cheaper deals. It's very tempting, but you could be stuck with a deal for many, many years and it not going up in value at all. It could be absolutely stagnant for 10, 15 years. It really can be. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I would say, is this. If you're buying a development site, which sounds incredibly cheap, and of course I bought a block of flats, part finished recently, quite a complicated deal for £1. You might have heard about it or seen it on my YouTube a while ago. We're going to do an update on that, because we've made great progress on that, where we're recladding 215 flats on behalf of the residents, and we're completing 80 flats which aren't finished, and I paid £1 for it. So everyone, oh wow, fantastic. Yes, but we are spending 35 million to put it right. So it is a decent deal at the end of the day, and we're also helping the 215 residents who have got cladding problems as well as part of that deal. But it's a challenge. So when something's very cheap, it's probably a big challenge. And I'm going to give you an example now of another property where, or other properties where they sound very, very cheap. But the reason they're cheap is because they need so much building work. As just a rule of thumb, this is worth really listening to, what I'm going to say next. And that is this. If you are spending more on a property developing it, or refurbishing it, than you have to purchase it, then be very careful. And the reason is, the more building work you do, the bigger the risk that building work will end up costing a lot more money and taking a lot longer than you think it will. So it's very tempting, because you're getting in at a very low level in terms of purchase. But if that purchase means then you've got to spend 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 times maybe what it's cost to purchase to get the work done, then the risk is in the building work. That's where the risk is. Not so much in the selling of it or the letting of it at the end, but the build work, where you might find, I've got an example of one at the moment, and I'm a very experienced developer, of course, but I've got one at the moment where I paid $450,000 for the project, to convert it into 8 flats. I'm spending 1.6 million on the project. Okay, and hopefully it's worth 3 million when it's all done, so it's fine. But I'm a very experienced developer, and I know where I'm going with that, and I know I've got figures, up-to-date figures, and on my masterclasses, especially the 2-day advanced masterclass that I do, you know, I talk about all this sort of thing, because when, you know, as you do bigger and more sophisticated deals, it's so important because the build costs are so important. So what I'm saying is the risk, the purchase price seems very temptingly low, but the build costs can really be a challenge and can get out of control if you're not careful, especially if it's conversion, because it's very difficult for any contractor to put a fixed price on that work. So really be careful on that. So I'm not saying don't buy cheap properties. Of course, we all want to buy them. In conclusion, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying be very careful, because what might sound cheap to start with could end up a bit of a nightmare. If I can help you in any way, please contact me at johnhowardproperty.com. Come on my masterclass, read my books. This is one of the most popular ones. I've written 5 books. This is a really good, solid book for the people who are starting out in property developing and investing, and I've got a more advanced book for the people who are cracking on and doing more deals. See you next time.